And I've determined there's 7 traits that every top producer I've ever met practice regularly. So if you're interested, watch this video to the end. And I'm going to throw in one bonus trait that nobody talks about, but I think is one of the real keys to being successful. More billionaires do this than any other type of a person. Billionaires practice this bonus 8 more than anybody else. So hang in there. Here we go. Number 1, they are obsessed with follow-up. It doesn't matter what the person said. They're interested, not interested. They follow up, they follow up, they follow up. And if it's not that property, they try to figure out what property it is they want to buy, what their interests are, what they would actually purchase. If it's a seller, they're relentless. They're constantly trying to share their value and why they can actually sell real estate better than anybody else and why that client should list with them. But follow up, it's just like it's in their DNA. They just don't know how to quit, and they'll follow up forever until they get the deal. And that's number 1. Number 2, they are ruthlessly consistent. They're consistent at what time they get up every day, what time they go to bed every night. They're consistent in their prospecting. They're consistent in their marketing. They're consistent in their schedule. They're consistent in everything they do because they know consistency, and if you want to slash persistence, breeds success. It creates success. It's the consistency. It's not jumping around from this thing to that thing, this shiny object to that shiny object, this company to that company. You know, those agents are like fleas. They're like panic mice. They never settle down, they never get consistent, and they never see results. Top agents, they are consistent. They are like clockwork. They can be counted on. They can count on themselves. They know what they're going to do every day, and they execute. And that is the secret to most things, consistency. Even with social media, you know, you make a post, you don't get any likes, you keep doing it anyways. Like farming. You send a postcard, no one responds, you keep sending them anyways. For years and years and years. That's what creates consistency, and that's what creates success. The other thing is, and this is number 3, they act like business owners. They act like CEOs. They know they're entrepreneurs. They know they're not salespeople. They realize that they are running a business. Therefore, they don't just only work in the business, they also work on the business. What do I mean by that? Some agents are just super transactional. They just go from transaction to transaction to transaction without any thought about what they're trying to build, what they're trying to do, what they're trying to create. They're just trying to make a sale to pay the bills, and that's the mistake. This is not a transaction business. This is a pipeline business. And what you want is a pipeline of business coming at you so that you can create consistency and not just go from check to check, you know, or get a check, spend it all, make a check, spend it all. You know, we want to get ahead of this game, don't we? Don't we want to make money? Don't we want to save money? That's why we have to think of it like a pipeline of business. And the only way to think of it that way is to have a CEO entrepreneurial mentality where you're setting up systems and structure and policy manuals, and you're actually building a business that you could just hand the playbook to somebody that they could step in and just run it themselves. So it's being that CEO, it's being the person, it's being the delegator, and only like you, and this is really critical, you know, doing the things that you should be doing and delegating everything else. But to get to that point, you've actually got to work on the business, think about the business, put a business plan together for your business, and not just be this transactional type agent like so many are. They're the ones that they never really get ahead. They just live month to month, so to speak. So be the CEO of your business. The other thing about these CEO type realtors, they make sure that they hire the support team around them so that they can be successful. The admin person, the marketing person, some team members to work with to sit their open houses like that. Because they know that their money, they're the rainmakers. They're out there, you know, bringing in the leads, bringing in the business. I have a saying that once you make a sale, it puts you out of business. Well, wait a minute, Peter, what do you mean by that? I just made a sale. Why am I out of business? The reason you're out of business is because I know you. And I know now you're going to take 100% of your time to make sure that deal closes. And the problem with that is once that deal closes, you don't have any new business. And so if you don't have ways of managing transactions and escrows once you're there, you have no time to prospect for new business. And the only way to do that is to have a support team around you. So if you want a business that has a pipeline flow of business rather than being transactional, you absolutely have to have a support team around you. And that also means not sitting there studying fonts, working with Canva, focusing on like, should my mailer be blue or red? None of that matters. You just need somebody else to get your mailers out for you. The other thing about top producers, and this is number 4, and this is a big one, there's no commission breath. I was on a presentation just the other day, and it was for a pretty big listing opportunity. And I was supporting one of our top agents. And when he saw the project and he saw the price the seller wanted, he was really, really quick to say no. He didn't need the deal. He wasn't worried about getting a sign on the property, and it was in his farm, because he realized he was just going to be, working on something that was never ever going to sell. So top salespeople, they listen. They're responding to clients. They're thinking about what the client is trying to accomplish. And people that aren't at the top of their game are more worried about things like, oh, I hope he picks me. Gosh, they're thinking like, I wonder who else he's interviewing. And that just like smells like commission breath. It smells like you're needy. It smells like if you don't get this deal, you're not going to make it. And even if you are at that place in your life where you really need a deal, you have to fake it. You have to act like a top producer. You have to be willing to walk away from the deal. And that is one of the keys. The other thing is that top producers do is they're subtle. They're good listeners, and they usually follow up everything that the potential client says with a question, because they're trying to get below the line. They're trying to figure out the motivation of the client much more than anything. Like when I talk to an agent and they say, gosh, my listing hasn't sold, I really want to get a price reduction. I've been working on this thing for a while. What do you think the first question I ask is? I always ask the same question. Well, what is the motivation of the client? Because if the client's motivation is only to get top dollar, they don't have to sell, then you have to make a decision whether you want that listing or not. You might want it because you can leverage it for other listings. You might want it to find buyers. So there's reasons sometimes to have an overpriced listing. But if the seller says, you know what, I've been relocated, or we have a baby coming, or something like that, then or maybe they're saying like, I lost my job. In those situations, you see a motivation there. And maybe they're not willing to reduce today, but they will reduce at some point. So understanding the client's motivation, key. And good salespeople find this information, because then they know whether or not it's something they should be working on. Sales is interesting. It's getting into a relationship with the client. It's creating a feeling that you're not on the opposite side of the table, that you're on the same table with them. You're their partner. They have confidence and trust with you. They'll actually share some vulnerabilities with you because they know that it'll help the deal come together, because they trust, you're not going to sell them down the road. And I think a lot of it is treating people with integrity, coming from a service mentality. They know that you're always going to, put their interests first. I mean, maybe they shouldn't be selling anyways. Maybe they should be leasing. And you have to have that kind of a mentality when you're speaking with clients, not being worried about you, but you're going to get paid, any of those things. It's more about like, what should this client be doing right now? What should they be investing in? If we sell this property, what are they going to buy? I mean, when you put all of their interests first before yours, they're going to know that. You're going to be coming from the right place, and you're going to be a better salesperson. The 5th trait of top producers is that they're community famous. And what I mean by that is you don't need 10,000 followers on Instagram. You need 100 people in your local community that know you and love you and want to do business with you. Top producers are everywhere. They're in your mailbox. They're at your fundraiser event. They're at communities, charities. They host parties and dinner parties and gatherings for people to get together. They can't walk anywhere without being known. It's like, hey, Peter, I saw your postcard. Hey, Peter, what did that house sell for? They're community famous. I always thought of it like, if you really want to be a top-notch realtor in your marketplace, pretend like you're running for mayor. Mayors are out shaking hands, greeting people. They're all over the place on social media. They're at all the community events. They show up at charities. They're everywhere. They're visible. The sixth trait of all top producers is they're coachable. They never stop learning. They're students of the game. Mediocre agents, on the other hand, or those agents on the other end of their life cycle, they feel like they know everything. They've heard it all. Why go to a seminar? Why see that coach again? I've heard what they have to say. They think they know everything and they stop learning. Whether it's books, podcasts, masterminds, going to seminars, top producers attend everything. Why? Because they want to stay top. They want to stay at the top of their game. And to do that, you have to keep learning. I mean, would you go to a doctor that stopped learning the latest discoveries and techniques? I don't think so. So remain a student, be coachable, and keep learning. The seventh trait, and maybe this is one of the most important, is top producers have grit. It doesn't matter what's going on in the world, what's happening with the economy, what's happening with politics. They are focused and they are tough. I love what the famous realtor Barbara Corcoran said. When a top producer gets knocked down, they get up with a vengeance. They have something to prove to the world. They don't spiral, they adapt, they pivot, they keep moving forward. If you're going to be on top, you better have grit. Oh, and by the way, number 8, I promised you the bonus tip of all top producers, the trait that they all have, and that is they know how to say no. Now, they share that trait with billionaires because billionaires know how to say no better than anybody. So learning to say no when your client is toxic or when your client isn't realistic about price and it's just going to be a time waster for you. Having boundaries, having standards, protecting yourself, protecting your time, probably one of the most important traits you can have. So that's it. Learn to say no when you should. Don't let the possibility influence you. You know in your gut when to say no. You know when a client is toxic. You know when you're going to get beat up. There was a manager that I had, very famous back in the day in Beverly Hills. She was amazing. And she told me, Peter, if they're beating you going in, they're going to be beating you going out. Boy, was she right.